add to this a little bit and kind of approach it from a little bit different angle because, if you guys go on YouTube, or read any books, I think the crate training, how to deal with whining and crate training, there are certain things that aren't talked about often in crate training. And when I was a younger dog trainer, I was taught, if the dog's barking or whining, you give them a correction. Just correct them for barking or whining. And what I've realized is, yeah, it does work a high percentage of the time if you give the dog a correction, be it on an e-collar or through a training collar, through the crate. Sometimes like slapping the side of the crate to just kind of startle the dog and snap them out of the tantrum. Those things do work, and there's scientific reasons why they do work. However, what I've realized is I've also seen trainers take it overboard where every whimper or exhale that the dog makes is they correct that, right? It's like they're kind of almost trying to subdue the anxiety or the whining from right away, right? And so I want to kind of give trainers a tool that I've just kind of developed in my head over the last couple of years. And it's what I call capping a tantrum or capping anxiety, right? And so it kind of works like this, right? So we all know that if you put a puppy in a crate, ideally in a perfect setup, I tire the dog out, I give the dog a chewable distraction, and the dog just kind of pacifies and chews himself to sleep. This is a perfect scenario with a puppy or a rescue dog. However, if the dog is overly attached, codependent, has separation anxiety, all these things, what we start seeing is if we isolate the dog in a crate, we're going to see whimpering turn into grumbles, like turn into barks, turn into physical tantrums in the crate. And this could manifest itself. The dog's spinning around. The dog is pushing against the crate. The dog is biting the wires of the crate and the door, right? And we start seeing this tantrum starts escalating from nothing all the way to the dog. If we were to put words to it, he's like, get me the fuck out of here, right? And we can kind of see this tantrum can escalate. And unfortunately, sometimes if you go online, some of the things that our clients hear is like, do I just let them like cry it out and figure it out? And the answer is, fuck no. You do not. You do not let the dog throw a level 10 tantrum and it's hope that eventually they get tired and snap out of it. So it's in these moments, and I want to be very, very clear with dog trainers, when your dog takes a tantrum to a physical level, this is when corrections really are helpful. Because this is where dogs can break their teeth, they can cut their paws on the crate, they can break nails, they can squeeze themselves through the bars and get stuck. It's in these moments where we see puppies can hurt themselves and rescue dogs can hurt themselves. So this is now where corrections come into play to let the dog know that's not going to go any further. Okay. But I want to explain kind of this schematic as a tool. So hopefully this helps provide value for you guys teaching your own clients. Okay. So what I like to do is I like to take the dog's reactions and I like to put them on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Okay. And let's say level 1 is damn near the dog's asleep. 0 is obviously the dog's passed out and sleeping, which is exactly what we want. And level 10 is the dog is pushing and prying the bars open and trying to bite his way through the crate. That's what a level 10 is. Okay. What we want to do is we want to see where the dog goes consistently. So if I see that the dog escalates within 2 minutes from a level 1 to like a level 5 or 6, which is the dog whining, barking, whimpering at a very high volume, right? What we have to do is we have to choose where on that scale do we apply a correction, right? So obviously if I have a dog who, let's say, takes it all the way to the physical tantrum, the dog's freaking out, he starts grabbing the bars, right? If I have an e-collar on that dog, I only give the dog a correction when he tries to grab the bars. Only. That's the only time. If I have a training collar on that dog and a leash tied all the way through the collar to the crate, I only give the dog a correction when he tries to bite the bars. That's it. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm interrupting the tantrum that he's throwing that might hurt himself. I'm saying you can whine, but you can't bite those bars. Sorry, buddy, you can't do it. Now, what ends up happening, the dog finds this kind of shocking. He goes, well, what do you mean I can't bite the bars? And he might try and bite the bars again. And you just keep capping that tantrum. You're not letting them escalate past that level 8 tantrum or that level 7 tantrum, right? And so when the dogs start physically trying to hurt themselves, we have to stop it. Now, what we start seeing is if we consistently cap at a level 8 over and over and over, well, the dog can't go to level 9 or 10 anymore. And what you start seeing is they start escalating to level 7, level 6, level 5, right? Now, what you might see is the dog now is no longer physically trying to throw a tantrum, but he's still verbally, rah, 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 right? Freaking out. So now what we can do is we can apply a correction for the highest form of verbal tantrum and barking. Okay. And if you follow this, if you control the highest form of physical tantrum, and then you control the highest form of verbal tantrum, what we're starting to do is little by little, we're teaching a step down process for the dog. And eventually, because we keep capping a ceiling on this tantrum scale, automatically the dog starts relaxing and kind of calming down and self-soothing because he knows he can't escalate. Okay.
Right.
Now, this all falls under something that I was taught, which is called sensory grounding, right? When the dog is we've all seen in movies, like a long time ago, someone's acting hysterical in a movie, and what the person does is they slap them across the face and they go, "Get a hold of yourself, man." And then all of a sudden the person comes to and is like, "Oh, what happened? Oh, I was sorry. I was upset. I didn't understand." What happens is when the brain starts getting in this fight or flight state, the only way we can snap them out of it is sometimes bringing them back to their sensory. And so if that means giving them a correction, all of a sudden they go, "What happened to my neck?" Then all of a sudden the dog's anxiety just calms down. And this is why corrections work in dog training, right?
Yeah, in general,
right? If my dog's barking at the other dog, I give him a correction and he stops. Well, because I'm interrupting that fight or flight mechanism where the dog goes, "Oh, okay, I guess I'm not as anxious anymore right now." Okay. So this is something that people don't talk about a lot on the internet, and you don't see videos on it, and you don't see people, because it's very easy to get out of hand. Right.
Well, it's also very easy to take out of context because it's online. And I think I want to take that one step further and say the reason why this works, the reason why sensory grounding works, at least in human beings, and like the way that you've kind of formulated that in your head, like the whole capping versus like chasing, which absolutely I agree with. Here's something else that I've kind of formulated in my head that I apply to dogs. I didn't invent this wheel. It's a human concept that I've applied to dogs. It's cognitive behavioral therapy. So like, why then, other than disrupting that thought process, disrupting that moment of panic, why else does full-on dog training work to help dogs relax in the crate? And what I mean is this. I absolutely agree with you. That was an earlier point you made too about like, don't kill yourself trying to correct every little thing. It's just not worth it. It's not fair really to the dog. If the dog's anxious in the crate, you have to be understanding to a degree. Like, yeah, we can talk about that. I get it. I'm sorry. Like, look, man, as long as you don't really freak out, all right, why not a little bit? Okay, fine. Maybe over time you can start knocking it down. I agree with that too.
Yeah.
Like you start with the big stuff and then walk backwards from there, 100%.
Yeah.
But my big thing is training. Other than just correcting the dog, work on actual commands in there. And here's why. In cognitive behavioral therapy, the way that it goes is you have your thoughts and your feelings and your actions, and you think of like this triangle, and you can be influenced by any two of these three things at once, but one of them is dominating the other one. So for example, let's say your thoughts are dominating your feelings. An example of that would be, I think I've mentioned this before, but it's like, I hate traffic. So I have my motorcycle. In LA, I would lane split, and parking and all that was a breeze. And before I got my bike, I would be sitting in traffic in my truck, just pissed for no reason. It's obviously illogical, but my thoughts were being overrun by my feelings. So I'm thinking mean things. I'm like getting upset. So, but I got my bike, so I don't deal with that anymore. I lane split. It's all good. No more traffic. I'm home quick. But for whatever dumb reason, I would get home and like make myself upset. After avoiding all this traffic, I would still get home and watch videos of like things that would make me mad, like car crashing into a biker, like something that would piss me off as a motorcycle rider, which makes no sense. And I totally understand that it was a stupid thing to do, but that's where my head was at the time. And then the inverse of that, when I was learning about cognitive behavioral therapy, was instead of letting your like thoughts kind of drag your feelings into a negative place, why don't you drag them into a positive place? How about you get home being annoyed about traffic and go for a run, make yourself feel better. But the point of that was, thoughts, feelings, actions, what you do or what you think can influence how you feel. And so since you can't necessarily always like directly just influence a dog's feelings, like, hey, you be calm. Mm-hmm. What you can do is influence what they do.
Yeah.
So, you know, and so if a dog is in there whining it out and panting and like you said, trying to bend their way out, hurting themselves, what I can do is, hey, nope, down.
Yeah.
And so that dog their tantrum is interrupted because I've still given that correction.
Right.
But also I'm like, you know what you need to do is lay down and stop moving. And I know you know how to do that. Mm-hmm. You can be nervous. They may still be in the down position, mm-hmm. but you're going to be down.
Right.
And from there, you start creating some sort of grounding to where the dog knows, like, oh, whoops, let me lay down right here. And so because of that, it's really hard for the brain, for the thoughts and the feelings to keep running at 1,000 miles an hour when the physical element is like 12 or 13 because they're just chilling, laying still.
Yeah.
And so naturally, the body finds that balance and they come to a happy medium, which is why cognitive behavioral therapy works in human beings. And that's kind of how I approach it with dogs. That's why I say actual obedience in the crate is hugely important. Don't just correct the dog, correct them and then direct them. You know, like, no, down, no, like, you know, give them a command.
Right. 100%. And I would say for dogs who are extremely anxious, who have that type of, I think obedience foundation is probably the most effective and efficient way to get that dog used to the crate. When we're dealing with puppies who don't necessarily have very strong conditioned, opposition to the crate, something as simple as just capping the tantrums can be really, really helpful. Now, again, in a perfect world, we exercise the dog and we put him in the crate with a tasty chew toy. But what I've noticed, and you guys might have noticed this as well, sometimes the dog doesn't give a shit about that chew toy if they're throwing a tantrum. Right. And I've had clients that they go, I put his tastiest bone in there. I put his favorite toy in there. He doesn't give two shits. All he's doing is whining and looking at me with puppy eyes. And so what we can start doing is whatever the extreme emotional tantrum or physical tantrum that the dog is throwing, we can put a cap on it. And what we start seeing is as the dog relaxes, literally, I've had clients in 45 seconds, they say, hey, cut it out. They clap their hands or they give the dog a correction or they tap the side of the crate. The dog goes, oh, sorry. Okay, I'll snap out of it. And then they go start chewing their bone, right? Mm-hmm. So this isn't necessarily a method that you have to use every time the dog's in the crate. But if you do it once, twice, 3 times, you're going to see that your dog learns to relax and your dog actually learns to decompress naturally because they understand that the tantrum doesn't happen in crates.